Industry knowledge is a topic that's part of the exam, but that Salesforce does not offer any formal training to help you prepare. So these deep dive lectures will cover topics you need to understand in order to be ready for the Service Cloud exam. Here are the objectives of the industry knowledge section, directly from the Salesforce study guide. I will cover all 6 of them in these next lectures. To keep things organized, each topic will have its own lecture, starting with metrics, KPIs, and business challenges up next. Our first topic is key contact center metrics, KPIs, and business challenges. First, we'll talk through some typical metrics that you'll see in the contact center, and then KPIs, and then I'll briefly cover some of the key business challenges you see in a contact center. So our first metric is average speed of answer. Average speed of answer applies usually to phone and chat channels, and it's a measure of how long the customer had to spend waiting before they got to talk to a person. So it's the time they spent in the queue. Oftentimes you'll see the average speed of answer referred to in terms of a service level. So they might have a requirement such as 80% of our calls are answered within 30 seconds. That means the caller didn't have to wait longer than 30 seconds in the queue listening to hold music before they got to talk to somebody. Average speed of answer can be influenced or impacted by increasing the number of agents you have. If there's more people on the phones, you can answer more calls out of that queue faster. Or you can reduce the number of customer inquiries by driving people towards self-service, and that in turn reduces the number of people calling, which reduces the amount of time people spend waiting to talk to somebody. Or you can reduce your average handle time, enabling your agents to take more phone calls. The next metric is abandon rate. Abandon rate is the percentage of calls or chats that hung up while they were waiting in queue. So usually as your average speed of answer gets higher, your abandon rate will also go up. A lower abandon rate isn't necessarily a good thing though, and you'll see why when I go through these factors that can influence abandon rate. One way to influence abandon rate is to increase your number of agents, just like average speed of answer. More people on the phones means you answer the phone calls quicker, which means fewer people will hang up while they're waiting. You can also reduce the number of customer inquiries, just like with average speed of answer. Or you can reduce your average handle time. Adding announcements while people are waiting in queue can impact your abandon rate. For example, let's say that you have a known issue with a new product release. You could put a message about that known issue into your queue messaging, letting people know that there's no reason for them to call. And then they may go ahead and hang up, which is what you want to happen, but that will make your abandon rate look higher. Changing your self-service experience could also impact your abandon rate, because oftentimes, while people are on the phone on hold, they'll go to the website and search around there to try to get their question answered. So if you have a really effective self-service, you may have a lot of people that are hanging up while they're waiting because they found what they needed through your website. The next metric is average handle time, or AHT. Average handle time also applies mostly to phone and chat, real-time interactions with customers. For phone, it's referred to the time spent engaging with the customer to resolve their query. You typically calculate that as some combination of the various talk states that are captured by the phone system divided by the total calls. In this case, talk plus hold plus conference plus after call work. That measurement may differ in different call centers, so be sure to check with your client about it. For chat, it's similar, but usually you wouldn't have the concept of hold with a chat because you don't need to put people on hold during a chat conversation. And then for email, handle time might be used to refer to the time spent responding to each customer's email. So a typical time for email might be the time the case was assigned, plus then progress time, plus any time it was on hold pending some kind of action, divided by the total number of emails that you're handling. A simple way to impact average handle time is just to make sure you're coaching your agents to be as efficient as possible on phone calls or on their chats. Another way is to improve the quality of your knowledge base. By improving the quality of your knowledge base, you can help your agents get to the right answer faster. Automating tasks that are currently time-intensive can bring down your average handle time. Think about using the macros feature in Service Cloud as a good example of how you might do that. Simplify your handling process. Just by reducing the number of steps involved in handling a customer inquiry, you can bring down your handle time. This could be something as simple as reducing the amount of information that's being captured when you're logging a case. The next metric, customer satisfaction, or CSAT. This one applies to really any channel. One way to define customer satisfaction is the percentage of customers who are satisfied with their service experience based on survey results. This is another calculation that can vary by client, so it's really important to ask how CSAT is calculated. Some of the ways you can impact customer satisfaction: improve the quality of the knowledge base so that your agents are able to give better answers to questions. Improve first call resolution, which we'll talk about more in a minute. Coach for soft skills, so make your agents better at handling a customer inquiry and making the customer feel like they're being listened to. Or you can coach for tech skills, making your agents more effective at handling customer inquiries. First contact resolution, or first call resolution, FCR. This can apply to any channel. This is the percent of customer inquiries resolved with only one live interaction with the customer. This is usually thought of as a good way to measure the quality and efficiency of the service you're providing. Wouldn't you rather get an inquiry resolved in only one interaction? So how can you impact that first call resolution? One way is to improve the quality of your knowledge base so that your agents are more able to get the right answer the first time. You can supplement your agent training to make them better at resolving the inquiries. Or you can automate process steps that are resulting in multiple calls being needed. You might have a process today that says that once you request something, you have to call back 24 hours later to see if it was actually done. Something like that, automating that process could avoid the need for that second phone call and allow you to increase FCR. I've looked at some common metrics. Now let's move into some KPIs. And I'm defining KPI, or key performance indicator, to be things that influence the financial health of the call center. Oftentimes, KPIs and metrics are used just interchangeably. First one is cost per call, or cost per case, cost per interaction. To calculate cost per call or cost per interaction, you take your total cost to operate your service center and divide that by that total volume of calls. This is typically used to help benchmark across different call centers or to calculate potential savings from reducing calls. You can impact your cost per call or cost per interaction by reducing your average handle time, which reduces the amount you have to pay each agent to take each phone call. You can also increase your total interaction volume. If you can get more calls handled by the same agents in your call center, you can reduce the cost of each one of those calls. One of the tricky things about cost per call is that it can incentivize some bad behavior. So by trying to keep calls shorter and get the customer off the phone faster, you might reduce what you're spending per call, but that might also lead to the customer having to call back multiple times, and as a result, your net cost ends up going up overall. Next, cost per minute or cost per hour. It's very similar. It's the total operating cost divided by the total minutes of all calls or interactions. You can usually get that data from your phone system or chat system. This is used also to benchmark productivity across your different centers or to help calculate potential savings impacts from reducing your average handle time. So if you're making changes to Service Cloud, for example, you might be trying to reduce the amount of time spent on each call, and knowing the cost per minute is important to be able to calculate that impact. If you want to impact your cost per minute, that's usually done by making changes to how much it costs you to operate the center per minute. So that means either changing your per minute pay rate to the agents or increasing the productivity of each agent. Let's look at productivity or utilization. Productivity or utilization usually refers to a measure of how much agent time is spent on productive tasks or tasks that are earning you money. It's often calculated with something like total productive agent time divided by the total on-the-clock time. Productive time usually includes something like talking, conference, on hold, or after call work, actively working on a customer inquiry. If you're using this KPI, be sure to ask your client how they measure productivity or utilization, because this does vary from client to client. Certain things may or may not be included in what's considered productive time. Productivity or utilization for offline work, such as email responses, might be measured a little bit differently, such as based on the volume throughput. How many cases or how many emails is each agent handling within a certain time period? You can impact productivity or utilization by improving volume forecasting or improving agent scheduling, so you have the right number of people scheduled to go to breaks at the right times to keep your productivity high. Or improving your real-time adherence, making sure that your agents are doing what they're supposed to be doing any given time of the day. Cross-sell, upsell is a KPI that usually refers to total revenue generated from selling products or services through the call center channel. Oftentimes, cross-sell or upsell is measured just in a revenue number or as a percentage of the total interactions, which included a sale of products or services. Some items that a service center would often be using for cross-sell or upsell might include like an extended service warranty or a RAM upgrade or a subscription plan upgrade. You can impact cross-sell or upsell metrics by improving your knowledge base so your agents are better able to sell effectively, or automating the upsell offers. So when I'm doing a certain process, I get a pop-up message telling me to make the offer to the person on the phone. You can also give your agents specific training on how to cross-sell or upsell better. Or if you really want to drive upsell, you can add it to your agent scorecard so they actually feel they're being measured on it. You can also change monetary incentives tied to cross-sell or upsell to drive improvements. Now we've looked at some contact center metrics and KPIs. That just leaves the business challenges typically seen in a call center. So let's run through what a couple of those most common ones are. Service quality and consistency is key in a contact center. You've got a large volume of calls or customer inquiries coming in. You want to make sure that the experience you're providing is consistent and repeatable. How many times have you called a company one month and gotten one answer to a question, and then called them back the next month and been told something that seems completely different? That's the kind of thing that call centers struggle with all the time. Another key challenge is employee recruiting and retention. Working in a call center can be a really stressful job, and so the turnover rate is usually pretty high. Another challenge is cost management. Call center operations are usually a pretty big expense for a large company. So careful cost management is usually top of mind for the people running the call center operation. Forecasting and planning is a typical business challenge you see in call centers. You have to be able to have the right number of agents available to match the volume of customer inquiries you're expecting to receive that day, and that can be really tricky. Think of something like a new product update coming out that has an unexpected bug. You could get flooded with calls and not be ready for that. Business continuity, uptime, and recovery is another big topic in contact centers. You have to be ready for anything to make sure that when you call, there's someone there ready to answer, regardless of what's going on in the world. Technology management is huge. Call centers rely heavily on technology for people to be able to do their jobs effectively and efficiently. So this is always top of mind for call centers. Tied to that service quality and consistency is adapting to the continuous changes that are needed from customers and from businesses. You spend a lot of time setting up a consistent, repeatable process, and then you have to change that every time there's a new need from the business or as customer expectations change. A good example of this is social media. Many customers expect now to be able to interact with the company through Twitter or Facebook or Snapchat. But 10 or 15 years ago, Most people would have preferred to call and talk to somebody live. So that's a look at key contact center metrics, KPIs, and business challenges. In this lecture, we'll cover the use cases and benefits of different interaction channels. Customer service has expanded beyond simply answering phones, so I'll explain some of the use cases and some of the key benefits of the major channels handled by contact centers today. Service Cloud can play a role in each of these channels, so it's important to understand how they compare. So I'll talk about these 6 channel types: phone and video, chat and SMS, email and fax, paper mail, website, and then social media. I'll magnify the details of each of these as we walk through it to make it easier to see in the video. Phone, or also video chats like FaceTime and Skype, is most useful for your high-value, high-complexity interactions. Since you are talking live with the customer, this channel works well for conveying complex information quickly. The main drawback for this channel is the cost. Your phone agents are typically your highest paid, and they can normally only handle one customer inquiry at a time. At most large companies, phone is still their most important channel for live customer interaction. Video is still not seen that often in customer service, but it can be extremely useful for on-site troubleshooting, so it's likely you're going to see it more in coming years. Next is chat. Chat usually refers to the chat windows you can access through a company's website. They often pop up in the corner asking if you need any help, and if you say yes, they connect you to chat live with an agent. I grouped SMS in with chat because its use cases and benefits are pretty similar. SMS is just another name for text messaging on your mobile phone. It stands for Short Message Service. As an interaction channel, chat is also often used for high-value interactions like technical support or pre-sales conversations. Chat is not as good at phone or video for highly complex inquiries because it can be tedious for a customer to explain a complex issue in writing, particularly for technical support, but it can still work well in certain circumstances. Often it's combined with live screen sharing to make it easier. Customers often prefer chat for simple things like billing inquiries or to get support when they're in a public place where they can't talk freely. Chat is cheaper to operate than phone. Chat agents can handle multiple chats at the same time, and they can use pre-written responses for common inquiries, which helps chat agents to be more effective even if their spoken language skills are not strong enough to be a phone agent. Email and fax are combined together here because many companies use fax servers to automatically convert their faxes into emails or directly into cases. And then they're handled basically the same way as emails, often by the same agents. You might be surprised how often fax is still used. It will likely disappear eventually, but you will still encounter it at many companies in industries like healthcare and financial services. Email and fax still play an important role in customer support because of the 24/7 nature of it. You can receive emails and faxes anytime, even if your call center is closed. And customers often don't expect a reply until the next day, although the pressure for instantaneous responses has increased in recent years. Email can also be important in places like Europe, where companies need to support a wide variety of languages and where the volume of each language may be very low and supported by multilingual agents. It's also easier to support a wide variety of time zones while still working normal business hours. Similar to chat, you can also use templates for responses with email, but customers often have a lower satisfaction with the email channel because it often takes multiple messages back and forth before an issue can be resolved. And the customer often ends up needing to call on the phone anyway. Paper mail is largely disappearing for general customer inquiries since almost everyone has access to email. But it is still used, particularly when dealing with legal or regulatory matters, which often require documents to be signed or delivery to be certified. You are not likely to see any questions about paper mail coming up in the Service Cloud exam. The website is a critical channel for most businesses. It works great for customers to find their own solutions to common inquiries and is often their first stop before contacting customer support. If a customer community has been set up, then customers can also answer each other's questions without any company involvement. These communities still usually require some staff to moderate and to administer them, so there is still some cost, but it's still usually cheaper than most other channels. Social media is the newest addition to the channel mix. The most prevalent social media tools for support are Facebook and Twitter, but there are hundreds of other platforms that might be important to your individual client. Contact centers often play a role in monitoring social media for emerging trends and for responding to support questions from customers. It can also be useful to broadcast important updates to a wide audience and to help avoid unnecessary calls. Make sure you understand the differences between these channels and why they might be used. Questions on the exam may ask which channels you would recommend for a given situation, and you'll have to apply what you know about their costs and benefits. In this lecture, I'll cover the challenges and considerations for business continuity in the contact center. So, what is business continuity and why is it important to us? Let's look at the Philippines, a popular destination for contact centers due to their language skills and labor costs. Just in the past month of my filming this video, there have been floods, earthquakes, a typhoon, and volcanic activity. Contact centers need to be able to deal with disruptions and still be able to operate. This is where business continuity planning comes in. Business continuity plans need to include both planned and unplanned events. Unplanned events are things like an earthquake or a snowstorm, or a network cable getting cut by nearby construction. It also could include something like the call center workers going on strike. Planned events could still require a contact center to go offline, such as a required fire drill or an upgrade to one of their critical systems, such as Service Cloud. Contact centers prepare for these risks in order to minimize the impact to their customers, minimize the duration of any impairment, and therefore minimize the impact to revenue and costs from any disruption. A stockbroker in New York who needs his mobile phone repaired is not going to care that your contact center in Manila is underwater. He just needs his phone fixed so he can go back to making money. So how do we prepare for business continuity? Well, there are two main ways. The first is redundancy. That can mean geographic redundancy, such as locating a contact center in Manila, but having another center in Nicaragua capable of taking over in the event of an emergency. It can also mean technical redundancy. Most contact centers have two of every component of their telephony platform connected, so that if any component fails, there's no outage while it's repaired. Salesforce also does this with their servers and network infrastructure to keep it up and running no matter what happens. The second key way to repair is with processes and procedures. When there's an issue, the contact center needs those procedures in place, and everyone needs to be familiar with those procedures. Things like fire drills will happen regularly. Hopefully, the natural disasters are less often, but when they do happen, the management team needs to know how to respond. If you see a question on business continuity on your exam, remember that the question may have absolutely nothing to do with Service Cloud. Service Cloud functionality may play some role, but the right answer could also be something process related. Just think about which answer choice makes the most sense if you are in charge of emergency operations for a contact center, and whether it achieves the objective to minimize impact to customers and operating cost. In this lecture, we'll take a quick look at different types of contact centers and their business drivers. There are four main business drivers that might require a contact center: marketing, sales, service, and internal. The first three are the three main departments that make up the customer-facing part of any company, and each has use cases for contact centers. The fourth driver comes into play when employees are the customers. A marketing contact center might be focused on increasing brand awareness by interacting with people through a Facebook ad campaign, answering questions about a product, and providing links to coupons. They also might pass on leads to the next contact center type, sales centers. Sales centers might be taking orders from customers, or they could be cold calling potential new customers using an automated dialer. Service centers handle most of the stuff that happens after the sale, and of course, they're tied in closely with the types of things we do in Service Cloud. Internal contact centers handle calls from a company's own employees. That could be your IT help desk, human resources, or an employee ethics hotline. Large companies often centralize these functions into shared service centers that operate very much like a customer-facing contact center. They create contacts, they log cases, and work through those cases to resolution just like any other contact center type. That's how we divide contact centers by business driver. We can also divide up contact centers by their operating model. And the two main ones are in-house and outsourced. The main difference between these two is who employs the agents and who provides the technology infrastructure. Generally, outsourced centers will provide the sites, the technology, and the people needed to run the contact center operation, although it's not unusual for some or all of the technology pieces to be provided by the client company instead. Most companies use some mixture of in-house and outsourced operations. These are the main perceived benefits between the two models. In-house centers allow for tighter control on the operations. Since every worker is an employee of the company gets more say in how day-to-day operations are managed. In-house call center agents may feel more connected to the brands they represent since their paycheck comes directly from that company. Some companies may feel that in-house agents will take their job more seriously, as outsourced centers often are viewed more as a temporary position. The main benefits of an outsourced operation are the ability to hand over the day-to-day responsibility to a partner, while increasing the capacity to scale up and down as needed. The thinking goes that an outsourcer can combine multiple clients under one roof in order to get economies of scale, allowing them to run more efficient operations and reduce costs compared to an in-house call center. Many companies use some mix of both of these models. Either can be highly effective, and like most things, it really comes down to how these models are implemented and how they're managed. In this lecture, I'll introduce you to knowledge-centered support. I'll explain what KCS is, where it came from, and how it relates to Service Cloud, and I'll introduce a few basic concepts that are part of KCS. So, what is KCS? Knowledge-centered support, or KCS, is a set of practices for creating and maintaining knowledge in a support environment. It includes guidance on how to structure your knowledge base and how to bake it into your customer support process. Where did KCS come from? KCS came from a group called the Consortium for Service Innovation. That's an alliance formed by customer service teams from a bunch of companies. They try to solve problems they are seeing across the customer service industry. You will find a link to the consortium's website in the resources section of this lecture. How does KCS relate to Service Cloud? The Service Cloud team at Salesforce works closely with the consortium on the design of its knowledge-based product. They call that product Salesforce Knowledge, so Salesforce is designed to work well for companies who use the principles of KCS. And to implement Salesforce Knowledge, it helps to have a basic understanding of KCS. The four basic concepts of KCS are create knowledge as a byproduct of solving customer issues, evolve content based on demand and usage, develop knowledge based on a collective experience to date, reward learning, collaboration, sharing, and improving. What do you notice about these four concepts and the way they've been worded? The consortium chose their words carefully here. Those concepts are designed to focus on what really makes a difference to customer outcomes, and to help avoid getting trapped in a knowledge management bureaucracy. If you create content as a byproduct of solving a real customer issue, then you know at least one person really had that issue. So there's a chance it'll recur for someone else. Then by studying demand and usage to evolve the content, you spend your time updating content that is most used, which means you're benefiting the largest number of customers. And you don't waste your time refining content for an issue that only occurred one time for one customer. Developing the knowledge base to represent everyone's collective knowledge creates a sense of shared ownership, which you can encourage and reward. KCS focuses heavily on rewarding the correct behavior of sharing and collaborating versus the common business tendency to reward people who retain the most knowledge for themselves. That's all you need to know about KCS for now. Even if your client isn't strictly looking to use KCS, I would encourage you to try to bring some of its concepts into their way of thinking. If they haven't heard of it, introduce them to it. You will look smarter to your clients or managers, and it'll likely improve the results of your knowledge-based implementation. In this lecture, I'll talk through the main components of a contact center and some of the business challenges that they can help to address. This is a conceptual map of the main components that make up a contact center. Starting from your left, you have the customers who make contact with the company through its contact channels. Each of those channels is tied into platforms to facilitate that communication. Those may all be separate platforms, or several of them might be combined within a single platform. That's often done within Service Cloud. For example, Live Agent is a chat platform that's built right into Service Cloud, and On-Demand Email to Case provides emails that allow it to be used as an email platform. Most of those channel platforms then tie into the call center agent's main desktop application, which is often a CRM solution like Service Cloud. In many cases, the agents may access all of their job functions through that one application, or they might have to log into different systems separately. As you see in this diagram, the call center agent may also need to access additional back-end systems to perform tasks on behalf of the customer. That could include things like arranging a replacement of a defective product. These back-end processes may be integrated into the CRM desktop as well, or oftentimes they're accessed separately due to the cost involved in integrating them together. The call center agent also interacts with support teams who help keep the contact center running. The workforce management team uses systems to schedule agents to match the expected call volume throughout the day. And they often use a real-time adherence application to monitor whether the agents are working when they're supposed to be working. The quality team will listen to recordings of agents' interactions and provide coaching back to the agents on how well they handled the customer inquiry and how well they adhered to the expected procedures while doing so. Let's go back now and look more at how calls get to an agent. When you call a company for support, often the first step is an automated greeting, often with the option to get some recorded information such as your current account balance or finding the nearest retail store location. That's the job of the Interactive Voice Response System, or IVR. The IVR can connect to the CRM system and other back-end systems to perform transactions and look up information. Usually about 50% of calls end without ever leaving the IVR. If you can't get what you need from the IVR, then your call gets passed on to the Automated Call Distributor, or ACD. The ACD keeps track of which agents are logged in and whether they're available to take a call. When all the agents are busy, the ACD will keep the calls waiting in the queues and play recorded announcements or music to keep you entertained. You may see the ACD referred to as ACD PBX. These are often both part of the same phone system, but PBX refers to Private Branch Exchange. That's the term for the phone system that a company uses to route calls inside the company. That's why you may only have to dial 4 or 5 numbers to call another extension in your office. The PBX connects your office phones to each other and acts as the connection point to the telephone company. All you really need to know for this exam, though, is that ACD or ACD PBX refer to the system that routes telephone calls to your agents. The ACD is often connected to an outbound dialer. This is used to make the most efficient use of agents' time by pre-dialing lists of numbers to see if someone answers. If a person picks up, then the dialer connects to an agent as quickly as possible. If no one answers, then the dialer may leave a pre-recorded voicemail message or just hang up. These are usually heavily used in sales call centers. They may be used in service centers as well for things like scheduled callbacks, but not as frequently. The ACD also connects to the CRM system using computer telephony integration, or CTI. CTI often enables a call center agent to control their phone line from within the CRM desktop screen. CTI may also automatically open up a customer's records when the ACD delivers the phone call to the agent. This is called a screen pop. Salesforce supports CTI for many phone systems using its open CTI framework. The CTI vendors have pre-built adapters designed to work with the Service Cloud console. They can pass over the phone number you called from or any other piece of identification you provided earlier to the IVR, such as a case number or your customer ID number. One more important component I'll talk about is the knowledge base. The knowledge base is often connected to the company's website through a content management system and accessible to the agent and also to customers visiting the website. The agents usually have access to additional knowledge content not visible to outside customers, and the knowledge base may be integrated into the CRM platform. For clients using Service Cloud, Salesforce has its own knowledge base built right in that they may use. But in my experience, you will often need to integrate Service Cloud to an existing knowledge base as well. Those are the major components of a contact center and how they help the call center agent to do their job. Every company is different, but you should familiarize yourself with this diagram because most companies have something similar created to match their own infrastructure. If they don't, then you can create one for them. It's great to have when trying to define the scope of an implementation project. Now we have covered the 6 objectives for the industry knowledge section of the Service Cloud exam. If you're watching this video in the Udemy course, be sure to check the resources section of this lecture and download the quick reference guides for the metrics and the contact center components.